Hey, in this video we want to talk about what it takes to get an apartment in New York City. If this is your first video watching of us, my name is Cody and this is my wife Sarah, and we moved to New York City 7 months ago, so July of 2017, and we moved here with very misguided aspirations of what it was like to get an apartment in New York City. Moving from middle of America, we thought, hey, if we walk into an apartment complex, we show them that we have some money, they'll sign the papers and we can move in. And
that's pretty much how it goes.
That's how it goes in Oklahoma. Not so much how it goes here. And from people that we've talked to that have come from elsewhere, the New York City apartment process is unlike any other city in America.
Yeah.
And we have learned a lot getting an apartment here. So we actually invited our real estate broker that we were able to get this apartment with. So we're gonna meet with her and talk about all the things that it takes to actually get an apartment in New York City.
Here's Stephanie. This is our broker who helped us find our apartment in Manhattan. When we moved to New York, we ended up meeting her the first Sunday we were here.
Like the second person we met.
Yeah, the second person we met in New York was Stephanie. And we kind of thought we would have to be in Brooklyn for budget purposes. And she was like, no, you can be in Manhattan. So that's kind of, she helped us get our apartment in Manhattan.
What are the most common misconceptions somebody who is from elsewhere moving to New York about trying to get a New York City apartment?
Yeah, so people think it's a lot easier to get one than it is. They think it's like how it is where they're from, which makes sense, but actually getting an apartment in New York is different than anywhere else in the world. Like, you use a real estate agent in London and in Paris, but it's still much simpler even than it is in New York City. So they think it'll be like how it is everywhere else, and it's just very different.
So for the purposes of this video, we're going to assume that we're not doing luxury apartments and that we're under the $3,000 price range, like probably more $2,000 to $2,500 range. Because that's, I feel like, from what you've told us and what we've learned, is that's where most people are in their budget.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of these extra paperworks and like all the extra stipulations are, versus if you have a big budget, you can just walk into a place and get an apartment.
You can, but you still need all of the documents.
Okay.
Yeah, you still need everything. Nothing different there, but it's a little simpler with a lot of money. Like, what isn't?
So one thing we didn't realize whenever we moved here was how much paperwork was involved, because getting an apartment in Oklahoma, it was basically like, let me see what your pay stubs were for the last 2 months, and that's it. I mean, that's like all you basically need. And Stephanie sent us a list of probably like 10 different documents that you need, and each one of those is like a good amount. So what are like the paperwork that you should need?
Most basically, like the very bare minimum usually, would be an employment letter. So that would be a letter from your employer stating your job, your salary, and how long you've been with the company. If you're not employed traditionally, if you're in freelance or whatnot, a CPA letter stating that you have ownership of your company and your income. So that's like necessary. And then also your last 2 tax returns. If you don't have those, you need reasoning why very clearly. And then your 2 most recent bank statements, 2 most recent pay stubs, landlord reference letters. So either if you've been in your place less than 1 year, you might need the previous landlord too, and ID. So that's like the very basic, like bare minimum, what you would need to go along with an application. An application can be 2 pages or, like, depending if you're renting in a co-op or condo, tons of pages. So it just depends on the building you're in, but bare minimum are those items.
So the reason you are having all that paperwork is because you're having to prove income. And this is the thing that blew my mind the most coming to New York City, is the ratio of income to rent.
Yeah.
So what is
that?
So
it's how landlords state it is that they want you to make 40 to 45 times the rent annually. So they want to see that you make 40 times the rent, your annual salary. So, and with a guarantor, like if you are having someone not co-sign with you but be a guarantor, that's also different than every other city, they need to make at least 80 times the rent to be your guarantors. And most landlords prefer tri-state guarantors, but some will allow anywhere in the states, but pretty much never international guarantors.
When we moved, we assumed that just having a bucket of money and moving here would be enough. And we quickly learned that's not the case. It doesn't matter how much money you have already, it matters how much money you can prove you're going to make, and that needs to be the 30 or 40 times.
Yeah.
And so we couldn't do that. So then we had to find a guarantor, but we're from Oklahoma, so the guarantors we had were in Oklahoma and not in the New York tri-state area. So then we had to find somebody who would accept an out-of-state guarantor on top of that. And then we even had additional issues that the guarantor, like 80 times rent, had to be on their personal income, not on any sort of business outside of that. It had to be on their personal taxes. It had to be 80 times. It's very stringent
Yeah.
to get your own lease in New York.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who move to New York that's not even an option for them.
Right.
So quickly, what are some just alternatives that people can look into if that isn't even on the board?
Yeah, so if they don't income qualify and they don't have a guarantor, okay, so a couple things I would do is there's two different businesses that are like the top of for this. One's Insurant and one's the guarantors, and they both will act as your guarantor. They cost money, obviously. They differ, but each about a month worth of rent to use them. But then you can have your own lease, and it's a good way to start that. Because even if you don't, like I've qualified people who don't income qualify for things, but they have a good landlord reference letter from inside the city. Or you can sublet something. It's just can be trickier.
There are options outside of getting your own lease. So finding somebody who needs a roommate, or subleasing from somebody. You know, if you are just coming here, like vagabonding basically, you can couch surf and you can find ads on Craigslist that they don't even need you to sign on the lease or anything. They just need somebody to fill a bedroom, and you just pay them how much ever they're asking. So you can get to the city, but really we're just talking about getting your own lease.
Yeah, because I think the thing to remember about things like that is that, like, in the future, that's not going to help you get a lease, because you have to, I mean, it's better to have your name on a New York lease if you're planning on staying around here, because they want to see that
you were trusted, someone trusted you, you worked out.
It helps you in the future if you're planning on staying here long term.
So another thing, whenever we were moving here, we did not realize how much people are going to ask up front. Most places you do have to pay a security deposit and maybe the first month's rent, but the rent is way lower. So you're talking like $800 or $1,000 rent, so that's a couple $1,000s. So everything in New York is going to be double or more of what normally it is. And then we didn't know how much people wanted up front, plus any fees that are associated. So what are all of those things that people ask for? And so in turn, how much should anybody save before they move here?
So for this, like for the $2,000 to $2,500 price point, I would say, if you can, ideally, you would save around $10,000, and here's why. You will have to pay at least 1 month security, and you'll have to pay 1 month up front, and that's like if you are qualified just off the bat, income qualified, they take you, the norm is 1 month up front or 1 month security. So that, and then if you, depending what building you get and what landlord you work with, or could be a broker probably. So right there, like if it's $6,000, if it's a $2,000, it's a $2,000 studio. So I would say like the very bare minimum would be like $7,000, but to be safe, I would do 10.
Speaking of fees, what is a normal fee structure? What does that look like?
Yeah, so fees range from nothing, depending on the landlord, to 15% of the annual rent. And unfortunately, you do get what you pay for. So usually the best apartments have the highest fees, like always. So typically, you'd pay 15% of the annual rent on that apartment. That would be the highest fee. That's legally the highest fee that you can be charged anyway. But it's also the standard fee on great deal apartments. Yeah. And then some apartments can be 1 month, which is great. And then some are no fee. So when you bring a client there, the landlord pays instead of the tenant paying. So it depends on the type. So it can be no fee all the way to 15% of the annual rent. And the ones that have the higher fees are typically a better deal. If you're going to be somewhere for more than a couple years, completely every time pays off to do a higher fee for a lower priced, better apartment.
We experienced that because Stephanie showed us like 25 apartments around the city, and probably 75% of those had 10 to 15% fee.
Yeah.
And then the few that didn't had special caveats that ended up working about the same upfront money. So
it sounded better, but it really wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I think most people would be interested in is if they are moving to New York City with a budget of $2,000 to $2,500, what can they expect? What living conditions, size can they expect in Manhattan?
There's three main things that are really important. So people have to decide when they are trying to work within this budget, what matters most to them, whether it's location, if they want to be near a subway, maybe near their office, anywhere specific, size, if they want, how much space they want, if they're going to do a studio, if they want a one bedroom, if they're trying to like an eat-in kitchen, or kind of the size they want, or the finish level. So typically you don't have all three. You have to choose your priorities. So I would say like once you experience even seeing like 5 apartments that are very, very different, you figure out, okay, this is more important to me than the other thing. And most of all, you have to be willing to live in like a 6-story walk-up building.
Yeah. I would say that's very true. I think I had different expectations going in because we looked in East Village the first time, and I think we looked at 2 apartments, and you're like, I have more, but they're just like this, and we're like, no.
I think that helped us a lot, is just seeing a few things, because obviously, like I said, we were coming from middle of America. We had this idea of what an apartment quality of living, cost of living was like, and that was all thrown out the window once we got here. But we began to understand a little bit more once Stephanie started showing us like, hey, here's East Village for this budget, and we're like, no thank you. Here's Upper East for this budget, and we're like, okay, this kind of quality we can deal with. And and then we ended up getting the apartment we have, which is in Lower East Side. But we got really lucky with the apartment, and is not something I would say to move to New York expecting to get.
No, in this area.
But we did sacrifice in space a lot, because this is only 300 square feet, and the apartments that were even a little cheaper in Upper East Side were probably like 550, 600 square feet. And so we would have had double the space in Upper East Side than we do now, but we really love quality of the apartment. Our area, like Stephanie mentioned, is just figuring out what are your priorities, and the overall space wasn't ours, it was more the quality and location. Is there anything else that people should know that are curious about the New York apartment hunt that everybody misses?
This is so boring, but if people come prepared with their paperwork, like I can't even explain how important that is. And it's so boring, but it's like if they are prepared with paper, or hardest of all is guarantor paperwork. Like if they have a guarantor, to get that paperwork figured out before, because usually people will lose an apartment in the time it takes to get their paperwork together. So I'd say getting that paperwork together is the most important. Like having, if they know they're coming here and they want to be able to find a place, like that's key.
The paperwork is definitely one thing that we did not have prepared up front, and that's one thing that Stephanie told us like in the beginning, like go ahead, start getting your paperwork ready, because once you find this apartment, you're going to want to get your application in quick. And we were getting it together, we were still trying to find some stuff, and there was one apartment that we really liked, and we found it like in the afternoon. We had our paperwork ready by the next morning, and somebody had already got it the night before because they had their paperwork ready. New York apartments move so quickly because there's so many people trying to get into them.
Especially the good deal ones.
Yes, and the people who will get it are the ones that are prepared and ready with their packet of papers to say, here it is. And it's much easier when all you have to do is fill out that particular apartment's application, and you don't have to fill out that application and find like 12 pieces of paperwork. So Stephanie's link will be in the description below. She is a New York real estate broker, able to help you find an apartment anywhere you want. She is very knowledgeable, especially in Manhattan, of all of the areas and what you can get for what price, and we would not be able to have the apartment we have now without her. So definitely, if you are coming to New York City, make sure to give her a call and she can help you find an apartment.
I'd love to.
I hope that was helpful for you guys. I know that, we kind of had different expectations when we moved, so I think the more people who can be prepared when moving to New York, the better. It also just takes a lot of stress away from you. So, and Stephanie is just so helpful and kind, and just such a huge relief for us, so.
Yeah, and I wish that we would have been able to see a video like this before we moved.
Oh yeah.
Made it so much less stressful.
You just should be prepared for whatever it is you're doing. Like, take a risk and have some fun, but be prepared in the risk.
So again, Stephanie's link is in the description, and if this video was helpful, hit the like button. I know this was a little bit different and also a little longer than usual, but I think this is all really good information to have. Normally we are out vlogging and exploring New York City. You can check out those videos on our channel, or in the future every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Sarah makes videos about books and reading over on her channel every Tuesday and Thursday. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you when you get here.
Bye.